Let's see if I can do some slope here. Nope, I can't do something slow. There comes the people. Getting worried. They're like, where are you people?
Good.
I'm gonna temporarily share my screen just so that we have something on the page.
Sounds good.
Hang on. I can't see who's coming in and out waiting. That was a mistake.
It's okay. I got it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're still getting set up and we'll get started in just a bit here. Thank you. Keith, are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Righty.
I'll let you do the intro. I'll just do a little bit of Doug business real quick. We're probably not going to have another database forum till July. We're going to take the month of June off. For those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or those who would like to come to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we're having our training day on October 6th. And that'll be in Grapevine, Texas. So we'll have a day of training. We don't have a whole lot of details at this point, but we're going to have somewhere around 13 sessions that we'll have presenters during the day and in a semi-classroom type setting. Plus, we'll be have serving lunch and meals and snacks and teas and coffee or whatever. So please consider joining us for training day. Right now, the admission is going to be $20 if you are a paid up member. If you're not a paid up member, it's going to be $90. So basically, we're making you pay for membership and then $20 for food. So if you're a member, $20. If you're a non-member, $90. So thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Keith. I'm Mary Elizabeth McNeely, and I'm part of the Oracle Database Forum in the Dallas Oracle Users Group. And today I'm pleased to introduce Kosella Hadeline, and he's going to discuss deploying Oracle 19c on Vagrant. So Kosella, take it away. Thanks for coming. Please let us know when it's a good time to take a break for 10 minutes. And also, please, if anyone has any questions, please either chat to everyone, or you can chat privately to me if you want your question to be privately, and I will ask the questions to the speaker. Thank you. Welcome, Kosella.
Thank you so much, Mary, and welcome everyone. I'm just going to share my screen because I think it's better, so we can just get going with this. All right, so let me know if you guys are seeing my presentation. All right, just going to make sure, do some mic check. 1 2 1 2. You guys hearing me all right so far?
Yes.
All right. Welcome everybody. Today, this is Kosella. Today we're going to talk about what DevOps can do to help DBAs. And one of the tools we're going to discuss is Vagrant, which is a HashiCorp open source product. And the main experiment I chose will demonstrate how to deploy virtualized environments hosting Oracle 19c data guard and Rack 19c, 2 nodes on your laptop, all that using one single command. Okay, maybe 2, but this will hopefully trigger your curiosity to explore it further because Vagrant is a very powerful tool. All right, let me first introduce myself. Right. My name is Kosella. I'm a senior consultant in Oracle ACE at Eclipse based in Toronto, Canada. I have a little more than a decade experience in Oracle and SQL Server databases through different industries with a background in high availability and virtualization, but slowly drifting lately into multi-cloud DevOps. Before moving to Canada, I was a DBA in a banking sector in a small country stuck between the Netherlands and France we call Belgium, which also happened to be the real inventor of the French fries. So just so you know, this tip is from me. I am a member of a Toronto user group since 2017. I'm a DevOps multi-cloud enthusiast. My social handle is BrokeDBA on Twitter or GitHub, not because I am, but because I worked for years with clients that had standard edition databases and where I had to be creative to hustle without AWR or Diagnostic Pack, sorry. So it stuck from then. Now that we're done with the intro, let's talk about why we're all here today. Right, so this workshop is destined to DBAs, developers who want to provision different flavors of Oracle 19c databases on a series of enterprise Linux 8 distributions. So basically, after a small introduction on some Vagrant terms, like Vagrant file, basebox, provider, provisioner that we'll see later, and how to set it up in Windows. We'll just do a quick demo right after that. and we could have 10 minutes break when that will happen. Then I'll describe each of the Vagrant builds I've adapted to run on Enterprise Linux 8 distros. And after that, a demo of Vagrant deployment will be played because usually it takes 3 hours. So we'll do a playback. And finally, a Q&A will be held based on the workshop, and some links will be shared. Right, first question of the day. Have you ever waited for a free disk, CPU, memory to be available in your company's lab environment, or for approvals to spin VMs with the most recent version of your favorite Oracle soft you have been craving to test? Well, we probably all been there in the past, right? So I remember having to bug my IT colleagues for weeks. This is like missing your own birthday party, literally. Again, what if you're between two jobs and can't use enterprise level infrastructure to up your game for a new challenge? How do we fix it? It's quite a bummer, of course. But if you have 16 gigs, 16 to 32 gigs in your workstation, you're like, wait a minute, what if I can get this done on my laptop, on my own laptop? That's where tools like Vagrant and VirtualBox come in handy, because whether you're dev or DBA, it will make your life way easier. Okay, then, let's learn more about it. What is Vagrant? Vagrant is a HashiCorp open source tool for automating the provision of virtual machine environments. We also call builds. It's just a layer that provides an easy to configure and reusable work environment with support with popular hypervisors like VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, and VirtualBox. For example, with Vagrant VirtualBox, you can seamlessly and automatically create or recreate from scratch different environments by just running one command, which is Vagrant up, and start designing. This framework opened up lots of possibilities for practitioners who want to just quickly spin labs in their own laptops. But what is it for and who is it for? For the what, it allows you to provision, as we said, and experiment and share your dev environment builds. In other words, just design your automation once, then deploy and share infinitely. For the who, it can be dev, IT ops, DBAs, students, anyone with a laptop and VirtualBox. In terms of features, the core features of Vagrant, we got cross OS support. It's also free. We have automated deployment and text-based configuration, which has a tiny footprint in your disk. We also have the ability to sync folders from the host to the machine default, which is visible in the default mount point, that is / Vagrant. And finally, automatic networking, which is very useful. All right, don't be worried about the IOTAs I've been put here. It's just an analogy that I wanted to show here. So the first core component is Vagrant file, which stores all your declared configuration in alt text format. And it's based in Ruby programming language. So you don't have to learn Ruby. It's just a declarative language. It's super easy to read and edit. And as shown here, we have 3 versions of IOTA. And if I had to choose one, Vagrant file would be the Holy Spirit IOTA. Why? Because that's where everything comes from. Also, Vagrant files are portable across every platform that Vagrant supports. Vagrant is meant to run with one Vagrant file per project, but you later see that we can have more than one. And Vagrant files can also be committed to version control system like GitHub, which is cool because it allows to other developers or whoever has access to the project to clone the code, run Vagrant up, and be on their way. Number 2 is the provider. So I call it the father because it provides. Jokes aside, just see it as a plugin for your chosen hypervisors because that's how you interact with your hypervisor, being VirtualBox, VMware, etc. Number 3 is the provisioner. So I call it the son because, well, it's optional. And here it's the automated configuration part of your build, which can leverage popular configuration management tools like Shell, Ansible, and Puppet, but it's still optional. You don't have to actually have it in your build. Number 4 is the Vagrant box. This is like your shuttle. So it's actually the image. It's just a pre-packed image which you'll use to perform a deployment with, and it's only compatible with Vagrant, obviously, and equivalent to Packer. Right. So you can build your own Vagrant box, or you can download one from Vagrant Cloud, because they have a repository where they store pre-baked images. So you can reuse them, or you can create one for yourself from scratch. But the OS images are varied, and you can have any type of OS: Windows, Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE, Red Hat. So they're really available with different layers of pre-configuration. Now, there are 3 major questions that a Vagrant file addresses. Number 1 is, which OS am I loading? And that's the base box, the image. Number 2 is, which hypervisor and what type of hardware specs I need in my VM. And that's the provider, like VirtualBox. Number 3 is, which apps am I going to auto-configure? And that's the provisioning, which we know is optional, by the way. So what you see here is an empty body of a Vagrant file, by the way, which you'll get to fill eventually if you want to edit or customize your deployment. As for the advantages, Vagrant file is a well-defined environment, reusable and easy to share with your team members of the work using GitHub. And the Vagrant file history is in version control, which helps review, update, and improve your code. And also, it replaced the usual traditional binary VM blobs, where the VM configuration is often converted into a binary file, and this gives no visibility to read or edit the content. But with Vagrant, you can edit and review the content easily, because it's text-based. And also, the environment ships with the code, and it's an all-in-one deployment instead of being just a deploy then configure solution. Right. For the provider, there are 2 types of providers. You have local and you have remote. The local include hypervisors like VirtualBox, KVM, VMware, and even Docker. The remote include cloud-based platforms like AWS, OpenStack, DigitalOcean, and so on. And in this example, you can see that we choose VirtualBox as our provider. There's one tip I can give. Number 2 here is just a release version of the Vagrant config. Don't try to change it. Don't try to edit that part, because the Q and Imagine release is still 2. For the provisioner is the part that automatically installs software and alter configurations and many more tasks in the VM upon bootstrap. We have multiple options to automate the configuration, from shell scripts to popular configuration management tools. Shell obviously is the easiest and simplest way to configure VMs, as it allows to upload and execute scripts within the guest machine. So there's no tech debt. You don't have to learn Ansible. It's ideal if you're new to Vagrant and also want to keep it simple, because it works already in your day-to-day environment. And so you want to keep it simple, and you're not necessarily familiar with Ansible or Chief or Puppet. Here, the shell can be a couple of command lines using the inline argument as seen in image 1. So you just use that keyword config VM provision. You specify the language shell inline. This is one command. Or you can use another argument that is called path, shell and with path. And then you can just decide to call a script that has a bunch of command lines inside. You can also obviously call a script using the inline, which proves that the provision is still a flexible tool as well. All right, what do you need? Basically, you just need VirtualBox in your laptop, Vagrant, and Vagrant boxes, and that can be downloaded online. I mean, through your Vagrant file, you can just target a specific OS, and it will just bring it. And you also need eventually a lot of memory if you're going to deploy many VMs. I will talk about where to find boxes in my demo, but basically you can either build your own local box and upload it to your online Vagrant account, or browse through the long list of available boxes in the portal catalog. So if you want to build your own, you can click on these two links, this build, that will direct you to Tim Hall's a blog that would explain to you the prerequisites and how to create a base box. And the second link is a blog of mine where it explains how to distribute that a base box into your own Vagrant cloud account. Obviously, be aware that VMs can quickly consume a lot of memory. Of course, the smallest requirement for the rack build, for example, is 16 gigs of RAM for the VMs, and may go up. So just be aware of that aspect. Vagrant comes with the console mode, right? So there are a bunch of command lines that you can run when you call Vagrant. The first one is Vagrant init, so that will initialize your Vagrant file as an empty project. So by default, you'd have like a default image that is initiated within this Vagrant file. If you have no Vagrant file on hand, you can just use Vagrant init to generate one, and then you can start to edit like the attributes of the VM, or eventually the type of OS you want to deploy, etc. You got, after that, once you have a Vagrant file, you can run Vagrant up. The difference between the two instances of Vagrant app. So once you have a Vagrant file, you have nothing deployed yet, this will deploy your build, right? But once you deployed it and you stop the VM eventually, you run again Vagrant up. The only thing that it does is that it'll start your VM. So it's not going to rebuild your environment. It knows that the files are there, the VM was created with a specific name, etc. So it would just restart the VM. You have Vagrant SSH, which is a passwordless SSH connection to your created VM. Within that directory where Vagrant file exists, you cannot run Vagrant SSH outside of your project, of course. And when you logged in using SSH, you would log as Vagrant users. And by the way, there's a default password for Vagrant, which is Vagrant. All right, and then you get Vagrant health. That's just a stop in the VM, like you would do it in VirtualBox. And you got Vagrant destroy. You can add a -F just to force it to delete all the files of your deployment. The cool thing about Vagrant is that if you will destroy it, you can recreate it from scratch just by running Vagrant up. So nothing is really missed. If you want to change some of the scripts, you can reload it using Vagrant reload, or you can just destroy it and recreate from scratch. That's what I do usually, to get my builds to be validated. I had to destroy many times, but that's a cool thing because you're not losing much, because all the information, the configuration is within just a simple text file and the scripts. You got Vagrant global status. This is the command line equivalent or console equivalent to your VirtualBox UI, where you see which one is up, which one is down. For the boxes, we have a specific command lines, Vagrant commands. You got Vagrant box list. This will list all the boxes that have been used, downloaded, and you have Vagrant box add. If, for example, you have a base box that you created, you can add it actually to your local repo using Vagrant box add, the name that you want to give it, and the URL. So the URL can be a local path or eventually an absolute URL. If you want to delete one, you can always do that using Vagrant box remove name. But basically, with all these commands, you're good to go. That's all you need to know. There are other commands, but I they're not really necessary here if you're just starting with Vagrant. Okay, I think now we can, after a nice review of the Vagrant concepts, we know that we need a Vagrant file, we need a base box, that's our image. We need a provider. We need to choose if it's VirtualBox or KVM or VMware. We can finally get to a demo. So this demo is super easy and simple to understand. So you can try it at home. Nothing to clone really. You don't have to clone a GitHub repo or anything. It will use an Ubuntu base box available in Vagrant Cloud. So let me actually switch to my other screen so I can eventually show you how it works. Okay, I think you could see something here, obviously. Let me just tell you about the some of the core attributes that share the same prefix in Vagrant. So within that body that we inside the Vagrant file, we have config vm.box. That's your base box that you wanna choose. You have the provider, vm.provider. That's the hypervisor, like VirtualBox. You have anything related to the network, and it goes under vm.network. That defines the network part of your VM through specific arguments, like how your host is seeing the VM, port mapping or forwarding. For example, you want to run SSH4 port to that VM that you created. You can do forwarding where the port will just be mapped to the host, the different port number. So 22 to 222, for example, just in order to avoid overlapping. You got synced folder. We talked about it already. You can define how you access files from your laptop. Default mount point is /vagrant, and it maps to the current directory of your project. You have also a provision. That is where we decide actually what to configure or install and how to do it. Either it's command line or shell script call or Ansible, etc. In order to initiate, as I told you, using the Vagrant init, if you have nothing, no Vagrant file, you can always run this command. I am there, for example, now I'm just going, I have one that we're going to do a demo with. I'm just going to rename it to something. I'm going to rename it so we can just generate one, right? Old. And if I want to just create a one from scratch, I'm just specifying this is the user and this is the image. So eventually I can show you where in the cloud we can find it. Okay, I need to explain you this. Vagrant cloud. Bear with me. All right. So this is where you get your Vagrant boxes. They're all here. They're free for access. Vagrant is going to use them. You just need to, this is the one I was calling, right? So that's the account. They have a bunch of images available, right? Base boxes, we call them, right? And you can find any, if you want, CentOS, any type of OS, based on different providers. If I want to specify only VirtualBox base box, I will just try to type Windows, for example, and I'll find them. There you go. So what I'm doing here through my command is that I'm just going to, by just putting the name of the account and also the image, this is going to just generate a Vagrant file, like a default one that I can just, just show you how it looked like. All right, so this is what was generated actually by that command. This is your box. Okay, that's the body. This is the box. And here we have different commented commands and attributes related to the network, port forwarding, the IP you want to give to your VM, for example, if you want to call it from outside, from your host. Eventually, if you want to forward the port, you'll do that as well. The guest, for any call to the guest with the 80 port 80, the host will just interpret it. Like you need to run 8080 in order to access to the port 80 on the VM. But here, this is more or less what it gives you. You can sort of change, and we have this part that does the provision. So this is where you tell them, I want to do that through Shell, or I want to do that through Ansible. And we have VM provider where we can specify eventually if the memory or the amount of CPU, the hardware specs eventually. So what I'm going to do now is I have one already. So I'm going to delete this one, Vagrant file. And what I'm going to do is, since we have one already, I'm just going to rename my old Vagrant file to Vagrant file. And Vagrant will just read it. If it finds a Vagrant file, it will just read it. So let me just do it in another window. Maybe you'll see it better here. And what I'm going to do is, this is actually the file. So I have things that were uncommented. So the provider is VirtualBox. I'm just giving it 1 gig of memory, 1 CPU. I'm going to give it a name to that VM. And further down, I'm just going to tell him, okay, you know what, just do forward, port forwarding for the guest port 80 to 8080 host level. And then down, I'll just go into choose path where this is where actually you run your script that will run upon the VM bootstrap, right? And that setup is nothing but a couple of command lines. Here, I'm just doing an update of the Ubuntu package manager, and I'm install Apache. That's what it does actually. So what we can do here is that we're just going to do a Vagrant up, and it's going to read this one. It's going to read this Vagrant file, and at some point, so create this VM and then call this script, and this script will run. So let's do it now. That's all I'm going to do. Vagrant up. You'll see that it will just read that Vagrant file and then communicate with VirtualBox and create that VM and giving it the name we give it here. So eventually I'll have a VM called Doug Ubuntu Vagrant that will be created. You can see here there's a preparation. So this base box exists already, so we're not going to download it. So it's going to take less time. There's some SSH configuration, so access to that VM, change the SSH keys, and eventually do the port forwarding, as you can see here. And then after that, it will just run those commands that will install Apache. And after that, you'll have that, for example, is the directory that was changed, that was mapped. And these are all packages being run just to install Apache. But if I want to actually access to that Apache server, I'm just going to do a small test. If I run localhost and I choose that port that we forwarded here. Let me see. That port we forward, if I put 8080 on the localhost, because now I can just do Vagrant SSH. I'm still within the directory, so I'm accessing the VM that has just been created, obviously. Let's see, OS release. We have Ubuntu here. Obviously, this is user Vagrant. You can sudo because it has all the sudo rights as well, right? We can be root as well. But I just want to, since we installed Apache, I just want to do something like this. 7. Yeah, 8080. And there you go. That's the Apache Ubuntu default page, just because we actually installed that package of Apache. And what we did also is that we sort of did forward mapping between the VM and the host. So my host, I need to run 8080 in order for it to map it, VirtualBox to map it to 80 of my VM. I hope this was easy, simple to understand. If you want to delete it, what you need to do is just, you can halt it. So I told about the command, you do Vagrant halt. This will just shut down the VM. You can see them here. You see, this is my VM that has just been created using Vagrant. So now I'm just doing a graceful shutdown. And when it's done, we can also do a Vagrant destroy. We'll just get rid of the files. -F. And now you'll see that the VM is just going to vanish because we got rid of all the files. Right. So this was the actual demo. And as I told you, I used my own base boxes. You can create yours, or you can use these base boxes. If you want to use them, just put them in your Vagrant file. But if you want to create yours, the link that I shared is this one. So this is Tim Hall's blog that will let you know, like, the prerequisites to create a base box. And mine actually was just a reuse of a Red Hat base box. And I need to put some RPMs that are necessary actually to install Oracle databases. So I just pre-packaged it with anything that is necessary. And on the end, I actually put it in my own account. And from there on, it's available for anyone that would actually want to have access to it or deploy it, right? So if I go to my account, I'm not. Maybe I can find it here. Yes, that's me. I got Windows ones, and I got Red Hat 8. So I created them. And I add some RPMs, and then I loaded them into my cloud account. You don't have to pay or anything. So you can store your images, even if it's 2 gigs, they don't care. That's the good thing about it, is that, like, it's not asking you to pay anything or membership. So that's cool. It's open source by HashiCorp. Now that we did this part, we can get back to the presentation, and we can have our 10 minutes break. But if you have any questions now, I can actually take them, and I can try to answer. But Mary, we can let our people know that they can take that break.
All righty, everyone. We don't have any questions right now, but if you think of some, please type them in over the break. At this time, please take a 10-minute break, and we'll see you back at 48 after the hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Cosella, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, are you ready
Oh.
to get started again?
Sure, sure.
Okay, sounds great. Well, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. First, I would like to just point out that I received a couple of questions that I found very interesting. Good questions. One of them was about the fact that the question was related to if Vagrant can be used for other provisioners like KVM, and I said of course it's compatible with many more. It supports even Docker, but I was asked by Near01 if there were any examples of builds, and I shared one that on the top of my head that I remember was the Oracle repository. They have a project called Vagrant project actually. So like you don't have to really go and explore some exotic builds. Even Oracle products are actually there are builds of Oracle products built by Oracle people. And there's a GitHub repo under Oracle/Vagrant-projects, where you can see a bunch of builds for Oracle apps or Oracle FVP or many other Oracle products that are listed in there and hosted in their repo. So you can just clone that repository in GitHub and get going and choose the product from Oracle because it's supported by Oracle people. Although there's a community involved, but I think it's a good starting point if you ever want to explore builds that are related to Oracle products. And I had a second question, which was, can we use Vagrant for prod? As I replied, technically it is possible, but I wouldn't suggest to use Vagrant for prod environments simply because it's not dedicated to that sort of environment. And for a small fleet, a test and dev environment, and they're 15 VMs, fine. But if you have a prod environment, there are way more suitable tools like Terraform and many other third-party tools that would just allow you to deploy and configure at the same time. But this is mainly for test and developments and get something spun and going super quickly in your laptop. That's so far what I used it for. If you want to use an application, for example, Enterprise Manager, last version, you want to migrate it, well, you can do that within your laptop. You don't have actually to do it at your client side or anything. You do your POC on your laptop, which is very good. All right, so now we'll just get back to the next topic. So I'm just going to describe my Vagrant builds from now on. And basically, now that we've seen the demo, let's describe our Oracle 19c builds. These builds can be spun on each of the following guests, like Red Hat Enterprise 8, Oracle Linux 8, and CentOS 8. So you would again use it with the Vagrant combined with VirtualBox. Right. So where do we find the builds? As I just was mentioning, GitHub is obviously the ultimate location to find Vagrant builds of any type. How it started for me in 2019, I first started to try a popular Ansible-based Oracle build by a guy called Mikael Sandstrom, called Ansible Oracle. Without even knowing Ansible back then, I had to read every role tasks involved in the playbooks, to guess or infer the changes in the outputs. Then I actually went on trying simpler 19C shell-based builds from Tim Hall's repo on Oracle 7 back then. And finally decided to adapt them, fork that repo from Tim Hall, and then try to run it on Oracle CentOS or Red Hat or Oracle Linux 8 in my fork. It basically starts with one or more clean machines and end up with a fully configured database or data guard environment or rack cluster. this slide includes the link to all mentioned GitHub repos, including mine. So you have the first repo from Tim Hall, which is the /Vagrant with a lot of builds. And then I forked it. And in my fork, I always focused more on adapting the rack, data guard, and single instance to run on CentOS 8 or Red Hat 8. And you got this one too. That's the Ansible Oracle. The only caveat from this, not because it's using Ansible, it's just that the last version that was supported in terms of database release is 18C. So I wish the maintainer had just pushed a little bit further to get 19C included. But basically, if you want to get going with these builds, you just need to run the git clone command line. So you can start to get going with that. You just run git clone, the repo address shown here with the git clone procdb vagrant command. Right, so now let's start to describe the first build. Sorry. First, I'd like to give a shout out to Tim Hall for all the hard work he's done to build this extensive catalog, not just for databases deployment, but enterprise manager and way more products in his repo. I merely forked and adapted the database builds to run on the new enterprise Linux distros, and made sure nothing back during each provisioning. So for the single instance, for example, the prereqs are the Vagrant executable, VirtualBox, and also the zip full version of your installable of Oracle database, RDBMS 19C. And you just need to, after cloning your repo, you actually just need to navigate into your directory that you need to deploy. For example, here, Vagrant /database /my build. Here, the build is Red Hat 8_19. That means single instance database 19C on Red Hat 8 OS. And you need to obviously copy the Oracle DBMS zip file under software directory. As you can see here, Linux x64 zip, this needs to be there in the directory, right? So it's the repo in GitHub is empty, so usually a few kilobytes. And once you clone the repo, you just need to put the installables under software, and then the scripts will just pick it and zip it and just start the installation. For example, here, Vagrant file is just going to call first script that is called setup.sh. And after that, this sh is setup.sh is just going to call a root setup. And this root setup is just going to coordinate all the tasks necessary to build a database, software and files. So we'll start by preparing the disks, install the OS packages, and then set up, so install the OS packages and then set up the user environment. And then number 6, run the, start the software installation, and then create the database, and finally end up with setting up the database services. That's more or less how it works. So this is all done automatically and in sequence based on the called scripts, right? So Vagrant will just call one script, but after that, everything is orchestrated by the order actually that you call the remaining scripts with. So that's super simple, one directory, just a few scripts. Let's switch to the data guard build. Right, so for Oracle Data Guard 19C build, required software is the same. We actually just use the file system-based installation storage. So we're not using ASM, so no need for grid. It's going to be the same installable required, but we have a bit more content. We have I would say like four subfolders. So the customized configuration is just a bunch of variables called by Vagrant file, like the name or number of CPU and number of disk, etc. So it'll be used actually. The YAML file is going to be loaded to Vagrant file first through the Ruby code of Vagrant file, and once it's loaded, it would just read the variables in YAML. Install.env is just the environments that would be called by the scripts of each node when the database will be created. Right, so the content should look like this, a screenshot when software zip file is included, like specified here. The scripts will allow you to build a 19C data guard system. Depending on the build or subdirectory that you chose, you can choose Oracle or Red Hat or CentOS, depending on the build, and you can create this environment using Vagrant app in each of the nodes, following a specific order, of course, the correct order. Notice that we have two Vagrant files for each VM here. You have one here for node 1, you have one here for node 2. Remember earlier I told you it's supposed to have one per project, but sometimes you have different nodes. So some people just prefer to have different Vagrant file per node, but nothing keeps us actually for having one, even if we have 10 VMs, for example. You have common scripts run by both nodes from a separate directory, and also it takes tasks that are specific to the primary standby VM, for example. So this is all common for the two nodes, because you need to prepare a database, you need to set the host name, host space, shared disks, install the packages. This is common for the two nodes, but there are things that are different from node 2 to node 1, like creating the standby database using ARM and duplicate on node 2, and the broker configuration. So that's why we have a little bit of tasks that are done and specific to each of the nodes. The thing here is that I added a link for the detailed steps because it comes from the Team Halls blog. So if you want to review the steps or the content of the scripts or the sequence, you can always go there, click to that link. It has all the details. Here I also choose one of the releases, one of the builds. It happens to be normally Oracle Linux 8, if I'm not mistaken. But the steps can be all found here if you really want to dig through a bit further. Now, if you want to deploy this build, by the way, so we have DataGuard, we want to deploy it, we have our installable stored in software. How do we create that environment? Right, so what we do is under that directory, we just cd to the first node. We run the Vagrant app that will start the first node to create the primary database. And then after that is done, we'll just cd to node 2 directory, and then start the second node to create the standby database and configure the broker. So after that is done, the ARM and duplicate will be run, the standby will be set, and the log shipping will be configured between both, and even the broker will just show you that everything is synchronized. Right, so the turn-off system, what I realized is that it needed a little bit more of a sort of a care when you shut down your VMs through Vagrant Halt. So if you want to perform the turn-off of the system cleanly, you would need to run this script, stopall.sh, which is something that I actually wrote just in order to make it soft, because I noticed that the original build had log shipping errors when we shut down the nodes using Vagrant Halt, right? So I noticed that it was messing up on the log shipping. So what I did is I created a stopall.sh available in both nodes within this build. So the stopall script will be run first before the Vagrant Halt, and what it does is it sets the state of transfer off if local DB role is primary. So we'll stop the it will set the state to transfer off. If the database is standby, the role is standby, then it sets the state to apply off just before stopping the VM. right? Because if you do a Vagrant haul without doing this, it may get messy actually, and you want to have the same state. You want to recover like a stable state when you do a Vagrant up again. So this is just a script that I added in order to make it as smooth as possible because we have replication between two databases. Now, in order to restart them again, I use the start all.sh. Why? Because when you start the VMs, so I start the first one, and the start all will just start the local DB role. If it's primary, it will just start it up normally. If the role, it checks actually the role of the database within the node, that script will check it. If it's standby, it will just start it up, mount the database. If it's a primary, it will start it up completely. So there's start all and stop all that I added into my build in order to make it a bit much smoother when you stop, halt, and restart your builds. Where else? Now we have Oracle Rack. So for Oracle Rack on Enterprise Linux 8, you will need to also copy the grid software, obviously, because you need a cluster. So you put the database, and the grid installer here as software because they're needed. They will be unzipped and installed. And also, you will need to start the VMs in the correct order. We have 3 VMs here in this build because of the DNS server, but this might be avoided in future. So you need DNS for everything related to the scan, listener, etc., and the VIPs in terms of resolution. So that's why we need 3 VMs. So it can get to minimum 16 gigs of RAM. So that's kind of a bit greedy. The creation order via Vagrant up is DNS node first, and then node 2, which will just prepare the server, and then node 1. So the node 1 will perform the cluster configuration. Same here, I added a link for the steps in this link. And we actually have, as before, we have common and dedicated scripts. This is the common scripts, and we have dedicated script for both nodes. You see here that we don't have much to do in node 2. Everything, most of the work is done by node 1 when it's run at the end. And the DNS is just setting up a DNS server with a bunch of DNS entry as well. Right, and if you want to dig through the exact sequence of execution and the content of the shell scripts, you can just click in here. You'll get directly to Timo's blog, and you'll know a bit more in detail the content. So in terms of sequence, let me just describe how it works in order to deploy it. So first you start the DNS server to manage the DNS resolution, like scan, interconnect, and VIPs. Once it's done, you're going to actually start the second node to prepare its environment. This will not take that much. So this is a light part. And then after that, since the second node 2 is available, you will start the first node to create the cluster and the databases and finalize the rack configuration. So that's all you need to do. These are 3 commands. It's not 1 command, but still. If you had 2 nodes and DNS was included in configuration of scenes and builds like that, you would just need to run Vagrant up on node 2, Vagrant up on node 1, and then you'll have a rack 19C 2 nodes set up, done. You can go and take a coffee or have your sandwich, wherever. You can come back and it's done automatically. Everything is silently installed and orchestrated by shell scripts through Vagrant. So that's the beauty of it. Because if you want to sort of do a migration or maybe an upgrade or a patch, you can just do it on your laptop, and you can have rack on Oracle Linux 8 or any OS and do your tests. And you don't have actually to wait for your client to give you an environment. You can literally prepare for even Oracle certification with just a simple build like this. Now, this rack build, it takes more than 3 hours actually to complete. 16 gigs of RAM, more or less. So we unfortunately don't have time actually to do a live test, but I actually have demos on the data guard in single instance installation, just for you to sort of have a preview on how it works. So I'm just going to try to play the single instance video, so you just know like how it works. I can see DB install. I think now you're seeing this. All right, so let's say we just want to run Vagrant up. It's single instance, same thing. This is my, this is actually my the image base box I told you about. So I'll just give it the account, the name of the image, and it goes online to the cloud repo of Vagrant and fetches that image. And from there, the Vagrant file is going to do all the actions that are remaining, like forward mapping, etc. SSH configuration, preparing the node, eventually anything required, like setting system parameters, the limits, firewall, making sure the users, Oracle users and groups are there, copy the scripts, unzip the software, do the software only installation, and then eventually create the listener.org and do the installation of your database within the PDB. This is a container database. So at some point you'll see creating database creation. You have a PDB creation as well. I think I saw it here. Yes, creating pluggable database as well. And here you just set the PDB to auto start, just to save in the open state. And you're actually done creating the services. And there you go. This is just one role, like a playback of an installation of a single instance, 19C single instance database on Red Hat 8. And this is a build that is available in your GitHub repo. You clone it, you go under this vagrant/database/Red Hat 8 or CentOS 8, 19, and then you just run Vagrant up. Obviously, you need to have the installable, the zip files in their software, and then Vagrant is going to do that for you. This is just a single instance, and let's maybe go to the data guard, because I have one for data guard as well. So this is the one for data guard. More or less the same thing. This is on Enterprise Linux 8. This image is different, as you can see here. This is not a Red Hat image. This comes from Fritz Hoogland. I think he's still maintaining it. So here, same thing. You create a database, you set it up. You can see here that we have like a new VM created. And after that, when it's done, all the packages. After that, the second node has to be run. Just unzip the software, create the database. Same thing that we've seen just now for the single instance. Once it's done, we go to the second node, right? Same thing, more or less, right? This is node 1, it's done. This is a primary database. Now we can go here to the, okay, let me show it to you. Right, so now we're done. And now we're going to run Vagrant up on the second node from the same project. And it's going to prepare the node, run the software, install, zip the zip files, install the OS packages. But then instead of just creating a database, it will do some arm and duplicate and cloning and recovering. As you can see here, let me see. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but at this point, yeah, create start-stop scripts. Let me see. I think I have something here. So, yeah, broker configuration. I think Armin is more or less around here. It's a big file, so I may, yes, right. So starting data file, backup set from the primary. I call the primary Montreal and the standby database Toronto, but these are, I'm going to show you actually where you can change these values. These are just environment variables that you can change within your configuration. But basically you're doing a restore clone for some service. This is just the part where you create your standby, and it's all done for you. So you can have a 19C data guard done for you. You can do any test you want. You can sort of decide to upgrade the standby database, convert it into a logical standby, and then convert it, use DBMS rolling, but you don't have to do it at your client site or in your company's lab. You just do it at your company's, in your laptop, I mean, which is the good part of it, right? As long as you have memory, there's a lot of things you can install. I've done a bunch of builds from scratch as well, so it's very helpful. In order to show you more or less for the data guard part, these are the configuration that are slightly modified compared to the original build, but it's just the following environment variables, and they are inside the environment dot install dot I forgot the name, but there's a file actually inside config where these are actually defined. But basically here I just choose the domain name, the primary node name, the standby node name, public IP for node 1, node 2, the Oracle seed for the primary, and also DME unique name for the primary and standby, the passwords, the PDB password as well. So you can sort of play with all this, right? So these install env, I think that's where these are all stored, and you can sort of edit the name of your domain name, the name of your host name, the name of your VM, and the name of your PDB. And that's at the end, you just need to run the Vagrant, right? So you have already the whole build here. You can change whatever you want in here in the install env and the Vagrant YAML, the install env. I may just, because I have it here actually. So if I go, for example, that's the rack one. Yeah, let me show you the rack one. Right. So again, here, same thing. You have the install.env, vagrant.yam. This is anything related to your virtual machine that as shown in your VirtualBox, for example. Install env is within the guest OS. So you may change things, for example, like the mapping of your disks, your ASM disks. You may change actually the mapping of them, and that can be done within the YAML file. Right, this vagrant.yaml, I'm going to show you the content, but let me just tell you what other environment variable I can choose, or you can edit the domain name. Here it's rack, so obviously you have way more info or parameters to change. You have a private subnet, public subnet, DNS public IP, node 1 public IP, private IP of each node, scan IPs, Oracle unique name, node 1 Oracle seed, the name of your cluster, scan name, the name of your cluster, the root password, etc. This can all be changed. I'm just going to go here. So we talked about all those parameters that we can change. Here they are, right? So you don't have to actually dig that deep, to change those values. They're all here. So just change the value here, and you will see them. You see the effect on your Vagrant. Yeah, there's nowhere else actually you have actually to dig in order to change maybe one or two aspects of your rack environment. For example, for YAML, this is more related to the VirtualBox part, right? So the provisioner needs this because in a virtual file, Vagrant file, sorry, the ASM disks they need to be mapped to like a location in your own laptop, not somewhere. If you have Windows, it's going to be drive letter, column, and slash, right? If it's Linux, then the path is different, right? You can change eventually how many memory you will allocate, how much CPU, and public IP here as well, right? So these are things that are maybe specific to the network and also the storage, but for the rest, this is all here. And the script that we talked about, this is the shared script, just to prepare the disks locally into your node. And then you have anything that is specific within the node, right? You see here we have two Vagrant file. We always need to specify the box and everything. It's just that now we load the Vagrant YAML in order to have all those information, the ASM disk, etc. Like you can do them, you can hard code them, but sometimes people just do everything in one file, so they won't touch much the Vagrant file. So they keep the Vagrant file as immutable as possible in order to allow flexibility within other files when they're loaded. So more or less, this is what we have here. Yeah, so you have CentOS, you have OL7, you have OL8, you have Red Hat 8 as well. You have a bunch of them. I'm just going to take one or two slides to explain some of the issues I had with Oracle or Enterprise Linux 8 with Oracle 19c. So I'm going to switch to my presentation. And these are just issues that I noticed, and I had to adjust my my build in order to run into Linux 8, Oracle Enterprise Linux 8. First, you got the parprob. Parprob is actually is no longer supported in Enterprise Linux 8. So if you use parprob to create the partitions, Enterprise Linux 8 doesn't allow parprob to read the partition after modifying it. So the system will keep requesting to reboot to link this modification. That's why you see this error here. We have been unable to inform kernel, so it's always waiting for the VM to restart in order to check again that partition table. So the fix for this is just to replace parprob commands by partx u, like defined here. So you change parprob by partx, and then you won't have actually any problem with partition table while creating the partitions. Passwordless SSH setup fails right after the config. Anytime you run SSH command, so I used to have this on the node 2, and don't ask me why, but after a lot of debugging, this happened for CentOS, Bento boxes, and Oracle 8 boxes from Fitlang, and I actually, the only fix was to recreate the existing Oracle user during the deployment. So I do a delete Oracle, remove the home, and recreate it, and it worked. And I can't tell you why it works, but it works. It works for me, and that's what fixed my problem. And also, this is a bit known because Oracle 19c 19.3 RU doesn't officially support Red Hat 8 or well 8. Minimum is 19.7. So in order to find a workaround, like go around this, you need to trick the support OS check and just add this line into your environment.env script and put export CV, assume this ID Red Hat 7.6. This is for the issues, but what's next? Once you actually deployed this, you tried Vagrant build for RAC or for Oracle. What is next for you? You can clone it, you can try it yourself, you can improve it, like reducing the number of nodes in RAC build from 3 to 2 and get rid of the DNS. You can, for example, explore all the builds. There's a freshly released RAC 21C build from Tim Hall, and he has data guard and he has RAC 21C. So if you want to try RAC 21C on your laptop, well, Tim Hall got you covered. If you want to do, for example, Enterprise Manager, latest version, some tasks, related to its migration or its patching. You want to run Docker. There are actually builds for that. You can explore also my Oracle FEP fork. So I told you about the Oracle Vagrant projects. They had FEP, which is fleet patching and provisioning for Oracle. And I did actually a fork, and I added the database 12c in order to see how FEP can migrate your 12c to 19c with one command again. So I was looking for, I'm like always very thirsty for automation. So I wanted to test FEP. This is clickable, by the way. So if you click on it, you can have access to a link directly. That's it, right? FEP, same thing. I just forked it. I wanted to add something new. Boom. And I got my database 12c, and I tried the migration to 19c through FEP, and all three and done in 2 commands. What you can do is build your own. It could be anything, EBS, Golden Gate. I tried also nested virtualization. So I wanted to try KVM, but I didn't want to have a Linux machine dedicated for it. So I used VirtualBox, Vagrant, and KVM was nested inside. So it was a very cool experience because it was all done in my laptop. You can explore Ansible provisioning for Oracle builds like Oracle Virt, even though it stops at 18c, and overall stay curious. But it's a very, very powerful tool, especially for folks that really want to try labs in their laptop. All right, I think we got to the last point, the closure of my presentation. So we're here into the Q&A. Feel free to ask any question, and I'll be happy to try to help with the best I know. And thank you again for having me. This was very exciting for me, and feel free to reach out to me as well. You can ask your question now, and if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, it's BrockDBA. I got a blog, my blog is BrockDBA, blogspot.com as well. You can reach out to me in LinkedIn as well, so feel free to do so. Right, but if you have any question right now, I'll be happy. So Mary, if there are any questions.
Well, thank you, Kosela. We really appreciate this presentation, and it was really interesting and a good level of detail. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one question. What is the difference between Terraform and Vagrant?
All right, good question, because this is the top search when you go to Google. That's the first thing people Google when they talk about HashiCorp products. So it's not a new question, but it's a good one. Difference between Terraform and Vagrant is that first, I'm just going to talk about what's common between them. They belong to the same vendor, right? So Terraform is a HashiCorp product, and Vagrant is a HashiCorp product, right? But Vagrant is there for anything related to your test environments. It's like your Docker, right? So we don't take it like it's not production serious, but it's still solid in terms of reproducibility, right? So you can have that in your laptop, or if you have the host with a lot of memory, you can have few VMs that you can like just deploy and allow people to do that using Vagrant. The Terraform on the other side is, I would say, the prod level type of tool to provision and to automate. It's like when you're done with all your tests and you want actually to deploy in the wild, and specifically because they have a lot of provisioners as well. But if you go to the cloud, you're not going to use Vagrant, obviously, because Vagrant, even though it speaks to AWS or DigitalOcean, people are not going to use Vagrant because Vagrant is local, right? It's small, under 50 and a fleet of 50 VMs, fine, but it's nothing big. While Terraform, you can still run it on-prem. They have a lot of provisioners, even community-based provisioners. But if you go to cloud, you want to deploy, the same way you're deploying using Vagrant, like you choose the base box, you choose the automation part, you can do that through Terraform. So I would say Vagrant is anything that is lab-based test or dev locally, even in laptops. But Terraform is when you really need to orchestrate, and also it has a state file. So the state in Terraform means that it's immutable. You're not going to destroy all the time, even though it has that command. But usually people, for example, when they want to deploy in the cloud stack, web server, backend, front end, you're not going to destroy it. You may need to test it first using GitHub, etc. But once you're done, you have the end state that you desire. Then you get it deployed, and then you start to use it in your business. Your clients or end users will start to use it. So there is no room for actually sort of recreating from scratch. If it's the case, then it would be like at the early beginning of the project, not when it's go live, right? So I hope I answered the question, but basically Vagrant is just a sandbox. Terraform is for big guys, if I may. Thanks for the question too. It's a good one.
If anyone else has any questions, please type them into the chat now, because it looks like we're going to be wrapping up fairly soon.
Okay, this is Keith, the president of the Dallas Oracle User Group. I'd like to thank everyone that's come. You can still ask questions. You don't have to hang up as soon as I'm done. I just wanted to go over a couple of things. We are probably going to skip June as far as any presentation, and we'll work on a presentation in July. Also, October 6th, we're having an in-person training day in Grapevine, Texas. So that's a Thursday, October 6th. The cost, if you're a member, paid up member, it's $20, mostly partially covers the food. If you're not a paid up member, it's going to be $70 plus $20, so total of $90. So please consider coming to the Oracle Dallas Oracle User Group Training Day on October 6th. The second thing is we've had problems with emails going out, and if you didn't receive an email from admin at doug.org for the information about the Zoom information, please consider emailing me and letting me know. I'm just kind of curious if we're still getting hit with spam filters or if we're being blocked off email servers as well. So please contact me at president@doug.org, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, I don't see that we've had any additional questions, so it looks like it's a wrap. So thank you so much, Kosela. Thank you, everybody,
Thank you
for attending.
I want to thank the audience, and thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. And maybe we'll see you in the next in-person event. Who knows?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be well.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.